And I call it going from cotton to Congress in one lifetime. And I think about my grandfather, who's today with me. He's 93 years old. And in his teens, he worked for 50 cents a day picking cotton, 12 to 14-hour days. He lived in a very different place that I've ever known. I don't know the place that he lived in. I don't know the South Carolina that he knows. But when I talk to my grandfather about this notion of education, when I talk to my grandfather about the American dream, when I talk to my grandfather about the things that matter to him, what he tells me is that there is greater opportunities in America today than he would ever have dreamed to be possible. The fact of the matter is that my grandfather wanted me to hold on to this notion that here in America, all things are incredibly possible, completely possible. And my grandfather had a third-grade education. And every day I'd come home from school. When my parents got divorced, we lived with them for 4 or 5 years. I'd come home from school, and I didn't know that he could not read at the time, and he would be reading the newspaper. Think about that. Here's a granddaddy, big old boy, reading the newspaper. And every morning he'd have his coffee and his newspaper. He was trying to signal to his kids and his grandkids the power of education. And when I think of the why of education, I think back to my grandfather and my grandmother and the sacrifices that they made so that I would have an opportunity to stand here before you today as a member of the United States Congress, albeit on the Senate side. And it was those seeds that were sown early on and through my grandfather, my grandmother's sacrifice and struggles that I have the opportunity to arrive to a place in life where we can have this conversation. It's remarkable that my grandmother every day for every year that I can remember up until about 1988 or so, would get on a bus, drive to someone's house, walk the last half a mile or so to clean someone's home, get on that bus, come all the way back to North Charleston, make dinner, spend time with her grandkids, spend time with my mom. I had the picture, my grandfather reading the newspaper and my grandmother's work ethic. I had this picture that education and hard work are the closest things that we have to magic. Education and hard work are the closest things we have to magic in this country. Because anybody can, and everybody should, see their parents' and their grandparents' dreams manifest in their lifetime. And for my grandfather, thinking through his struggles and his challenges, when I came along, he was a tough cookie. I guess people do get a little softer with age. I know that y'all don't really necessarily understand the switch and the belt, but these were apparatuses of encouragement when I was growing up. Anybody ever been encouraged by one of those? Yeah. Oh, good. This is a good room, Barry. Thank you very much. Well, my grandfather, I guess he had about 44-inch waist back in those days because that belt reached all across my bed every time he'd swing it in the morning because he didn't believe in telling you to get up twice. When he said get up, he meant get up and out of bed. So if you were still there about 30 to 45 seconds later, he would encourage you with that apparatus across the bed, and you would find a reason to get awake. You pop out of bed very quickly. And I will tell you that he was so committed to me going to school, so committed to my brother going to school, that he would do whatever it would take for us to find our way to the bus. That's why I am so committed to making sure that education is a major part of what we accomplish in the Senate. Because I understand the value of education. Because I've done it wrong, as many of you have heard before, and I've done it right. And I will tell you that arriving as a freshman in high school, knowing that my grandfather had paid such an ultimate price, knowing that my mother's dream was to fulfill her mother's dream. My grandmother, as I said, was a maid. My mother became a nurse's aide. My grandmother always wanted to be a nurse. And so my mother thought that being a nurse was a cool thing, but she didn't get the rest of the education to become a nurse. So she became a nurse's aide. But they kept telling me what I said about Deanie earlier, that if you shoot for the moon and you miss, you're among the stars. And so those three adults kept telling me and reinforcing the fact that you are going to be somebody. But that requires education. And so when I flunked out of high school as a freshman, that apparatus of encouragement found its way towards my legs. And my mother showed me that sometimes love comes at the end of a switch, and she must love you a lot. And she did. And I will tell you that as we fight for new outcomes in education, we're going to have to fight for the right reasons. It's not just a what. It's not just a policy. It's the why we must take on this challenge of improving the outcomes in our country and in our state.